All right, we are back in the Detroit is Different podcast studios. Once again, this is actually a good spring day in the swing of May, and I'm here with one of, I always use this term a lot. I use the term consigliere, one of my business advisors, somebody that's kept me from doing stupid stuff and also helped me out of some stupid situations. For years and years, the only person that I would have run through a contract and trust what's happening with that contract or what should happen with the contract is my entertainment attorney, Stephanie Hammonds. Stephanie, how are you today?
I'm great, and I'm glad to be here, and thank you for that wonderful introduction, Kyrie.
Okay, most definitely. You've helped in so many situations. I always tell people, you have no idea how many times I've referred you to people, and people always think to themselves like, that's probably going to cost a lot of money or this or that or that. I'm like, give her a call. But like most attorneys get called not in a preventative measure, but in a solutionary situation. So solutionary situations when you call attorneys, let's go into this. I'm gonna talk directly into the camera. When you call an attorney because you need an attorney, it's gonna cost you money because probably what you did is gonna cost you some money, and that's whether it's civil, legal, intellectual property, and that's what entertainment law is, real estate law. Anytime you need an attorney, be prepared to pay some money because the attorney needs to work, A, and B, whatever you got yourself into is probably going to cost some money in systems to help either get you out of it or whatever. So let's talk a little bit about that. Okay. Your background in entertainment law, I know a little bit of this story, but what led you into entertainment law is going to be one of the questions that I have. And furthermore, your background in the city of Detroit, because a lot of people that become lawyers know lawyers. So coming up, did you know any attorneys when you were a kid?
I didn't. I did not.
So you didn't even know an attorney coming up. So how did you even get the concept to be an attorney as a kid?
Well, I like to talk, and I could write pretty well. And when I was in high school, I remember going to see the counselor, Miss Audrey Lester, in Renaissance High School, and really trying to, maybe between my sophomore, junior year, really trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I remember taking a test, which it was like an aptitude test that really tried to match you based on your skill sets with a profession. Mm-hmm. Law was one of them. Like I said, I like to read, I like to write, and I like to talk. And so I said, yeah, I think I can do that.
Okay. All right. Writing skills.
Yes.
How did you know that you were a good writer? When did it hit? When did people start complimenting you that you're not like the rest of the class?
In elementary school, I remember I would write stories, and we had contests, and I would win.
You remember any of those stories?
I remember one story. I can't remember what it's about, but one that I won was called the girl from Springfield Orphanage. I don't remember what it was about, but I remember I won. So
okay, all right. So it was one of those writing things. Writing generally goes with reading. Were you reading a lot, and that helped you as a writer, or was it just one of those things you were very creative?
A little bit of both. My parents were both educators, and so I learned to read before I went to school, even to kindergarten. And so we, in the family, we would have like reading contests over the summer. I have 2 older sisters and a younger brother, and we would have a contest. Whoever read the most books over the summer would get a prize. So reading really was fundamental, like they say, and my parents really encouraged it. And so I know that played a big part in my vocabulary.
Ain't that something? As me and my friend Con would say, that sounds like lambda, lambda, lambda. The Revenge of the Nerds movie. The summer we were doing everything but reading. I had one of those like, you either inside or outside. It's like, let's think about this. Inside has popsicles. Outside has my friends. What decision? The trauma of a 6-year-old. All right, so this is what's happening at a young age, and let's talk a little bit about your parents.
Sure.
Did they live in Detroit their whole lives, and your family background and ties to Detroit?
That's interesting. Neither of my parents are from Detroit. I'm a first-generation Detroiter.
Okay.
My parents were both from Akron, Ohio. And
Rubber City.
Yes, absolutely. And so what brought them to Detroit was they met in college at the University of Akron,
Wow.
both in the School of Education. My mom graduated a year before my dad, and actually a little bit of trivia, she became the first black teacher in Barberton, Ohio. And so she was working during my dad's senior year. After he graduated, he could not get a teaching job in Ohio. So they applied, they both applied for teaching licenses in Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. And so the Detroit Public Schools was the first one that offered my dad a job, and so that's how they landed in Detroit in 1960.
Okay. All right. So was it one of those things where he felt that he couldn't get a job because of racism, because there was too many teachers? Like what were the circumstances of a black man wanting to be in a classroom, not being able to get to a classroom?
It was definitely racism. My mom had experienced it too. They would go down for interviews where they said, we need teachers desperately. And when they would show up, then they would say there were no jobs available.
Yeah, no, it was like, we weren't thinking you.
Exactly. You were not our prototype, because in fact, the Urban League actually had to get involved to get my mom the job that she got.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ain't that something? So, coming to Detroit, what year did they move here?
1960.
They moved here in 60. Okay. So that was like right as people were saying the mass exodus was beginning, meaning that a lot of white flight was taking place. What neighborhood did they move to?
Broad Street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Broad Street. They, my cousins had a grandfather who had a house on Broad Street, and so they lived with him for a year. Then they moved to Bayless. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So is Bayless the home that you remember growing up in?
I didn't grow up at Bayless. From there they bought a home in Northwest Detroit on Santa Rosa. Still have the home today. So that's my home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Santa Rosa, like Mumford neighborhood, basically?
Right off of West Outer Drive and Livernois.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically that would be like a Mumford kid.
Yes.
Okay. What do you remember about that neighborhood growing up?
I remember it was a safe neighborhood. It was a fun neighborhood. By the time that I was growing up, we had one white neighbor, but all of my memories of basically an entire block of blacks. Yeah.
Okay. Any stores you remember? Like I remember hearing a lot about B. Siegel.
Yes.
That's what people always talk about. But what do you remember more so, like the stores and other things?
Right. What I remember is that there were a lot of nice stores. There was a place called Ferguson's, which is now where, I don't know what they're doing with it now, where the Hunter's Supper Club was. That was a high-end retail place. I remember there being a Belle Jacobs, which is where the African braiding place is now by Cambridge. There were a lot of high-end boutique type places, and I remember my dad would always say that when they first moved there, they would do a lot of window shopping, and he always predicted that by the time they were able to afford what was in the stores would no longer be there, and he was right.
Ain't that something? Ain't that something? So he can also really shop, but it's like a dollar stores or something.
It wasn't the same type of merchandise at all.
Yep. So the Hunter Supper Club now, it's funny, it's a guy I know, Chad. Chad has this thing called I'm Here.
Okay.
He does God knows. He's like from California. He does specialty Japanese wood carving.
Wow.
It's unique. But Hunter's Supper Club is definitely a place that a lot of people have frequented. Events, meetings, cabarets, God knows, all types of stuff. So that neighborhood, growing up, and your parents, what schools were they teaching at?
Well, my mom, I don't really know what school she taught at. She taught first grade.
Yeah, boy!
Public Enemy's Minister of Information, Professor Griff, celebrates the 30-year anniversary of the best hip-hop album ever. Thursday, June 28th, 2018, at the Jam Handy. Witness a special Behind the Music unsung tribute to Public Enemy's It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back album. Hip-hop performances from Mahogany Jones, Kari Way Frazier, and more will honor the landmark album.
But she stopped teaching after I was born to really be a stay-at-home mom, and she really became like an activist at all of our schools. She was like an unpaid volunteer because she knew the importance of education. So I mean, every school that I went to, she was right there as if she was an employee doing supplemental stuff. They even wanted to pay her after we graduated, and she was like, no, I'm not doing it. So I don't know what school she taught at, but my dad was a career educator, and so I know he started at Miller Junior High School, and then he went to Martin Luther King Junior High School, and then he stopped teaching in the public school system because he pursued his postgraduate degrees. He got a degree in guidance and counseling from Wayne State, and then he got a PhD from the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, and then from there he went and worked in Lansing for several years for the Michigan Board of Education. Then he came back to Detroit and worked at Wayne County Community College as a program developer, and then as a professor, and he taught, well, I'll get to what he taught, professor and then a counselor. He specialized in Black history, and he would teach a range of subjects, but that was the broad connecting point, different facets of Black history.
Okay, so your mom was like that person in the lunchroom that, like, when I was in middle school would be like, stop running.
But no, she played more of an act. She did an active role, not so much an aide, but she would actually like organize cultural events for us, arrange people for dance troupes and different people to come and to teach different things. So it was much more hands-on.
More active than just like volunteering where teachers say, do something I don't feel like doing.
Right.
It was over and beyond that.
Yes.
Okay. And your dad, in this journey of Black history and working in education, what was his takes on a lot of things that were happening? Because throughout, I guess, his career, his tenure, Michigan itself went through the transitions of the demise of the public school system.
Well, he read a lot. I mean, we've got a great library at home, and he had an outline that he always viewed everything through. And so it was kind of ironic because in his later years, before he retired, he would teach a class called Illegal Narcotics in the Black Community, and he would teach specialized courses like that a lot of police cadets had to take as prerequisites, to passing. But no matter what subject that he taught, he always started with a very detailed outline of the transatlantic slave trade, because he felt like it was important that everybody that looked at Black history know how we got here, because he felt it was a direct correlation between how Black people got to this country and the problems that we face now.
Yeah. So
he looked at everything from that context and could always relate it to things like that. So
yeah, definitely. And condolences, I know, his passing.
Yes.
As
Thank
of recent.
you.
Sounds like I should have been kicking it with your pops about all types of stuff, just on the strength of, like, to enter that premise, as I do believe many of the challenges we face today in our community is tied to the trauma still existing from what happened during the Maiafa the Middle Passage,
Yes.
the transatlantic slave trade is different terms, but that form and that trauma is still so ever present on so many levels in the black community.
Yes.
As I've been told that if you have an alcoholic in your family, that could last and have impacts for 3 to 4 generations. So I can only imagine for over 400 years, as slavery, I often tell people, slavery predates the existence of the United States of America.
Absolutely.
So before this was a United States, one thing that all the states did unite around was enslaving black people.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
having them serve whatever purpose as the labor.
Yes.
So it's a concept when we think of tying how race and racism play such a role in all the facets of America and American life.
Yes.
It may be the most American institution that exists, actually. I sometimes argue that, or I think that, because it plays such a strong role in access to having a job,
Yes.
access to where you want to live,
Yes.
access to those old school things like grandfather clauses,
Yes.
sundown towns.
Yes.
And even though these things aren't explicit, even when we get into some of these discussions that we were having before the show, these grandfather clauses kind of exist just due to certain network sustainabilities and the systemic opportunities that are not provided amongst our people. So in this journey, you become an attorney.
Yes.
What did your parents think of you becoming an attorney as educators?
Well, my dad felt very strongly that whatever occupation that I decided to undertake, I needed to be able to get a job at the end of 4 years. He was
Hilarious.
adamant about that.
Hilarious.
And so I
Your dad was old school with that.
yes, he was.
You are not coming back here without a job.
Exactly. So I minored in journalism because he really wanted me to be a journalist. He really wanted to, he pushed that part of the writing because he was really big on saying you need a job at the end of 4 years and you could write, and they have jobs for writers, so you should take them. And but he agreed.
That was a different era.
Yeah, and I would tease him. I said, "Aren't you glad I'm not a journalist now?"
Hilarious.
Yeah. But he said, "But you know what?" He said, "As a lawyer, you can always work for yourself. So I'm not going to stand in your way. Go ahead and go to law school." And so that's what I did. My mom, they both just really wanted me to be happy, but my dad believed it. Hey, you don't have to like your job as long as they pay you well and you could do it. That's why they call it work, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's real old school. I'm definitely of the new school. I'm not doing nothing I don't love.
Yes.
I'm not doing nothing I don't love.
Yes,
But
I'm
yeah,
with
that's that
you.
old school theory.
Yes.
Like, who said like it? Liking a job. Like,
Right.
whoa.
Yeah.
Brothers and sisters, what was their take on you becoming an attorney?
Well, we never really talked about it. They thought I had a big mouth, and so they thought that I would be good at it.
So
Yeah.
basically, they were like, "I'm sick of arguing with you.
Let
you
somebody
argue with
else do it."
else."
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, and that's what people often assume, that attorneys just sit around and argue all day because, I don't know if anybody's ever been, if you've ever sat on a jury, one of the first things that's going to happen is you're going to go and whoever whoever leads the court, the magistrates will come to you and say, "This ain't nothing like TV." And the reality is, it is nothing like TV.
No, it's not.
But it's not a lot of the back and forth.
No.
And, nobody's like, an attorney has a briefcase and then they walk over to a briefcase and pull something out and say, "Have you seen this?" No.
No, that doesn't happen. It does not.
But Law and Order, it happens.
It
but
does.
Not in real life.
No.
So, transitioning the thought of your idea of what a lawyer was to the reality of what a lawyer is, how has that journey been?
It's been very interesting because you're right. Unless you're in trouble, most people do not have any idea of what a lawyer does. And it's amazing that even as a law student, And even as a law clerk, you really have no idea of what a lawyer really does. Law school teaches you research tools, and it sharpens tools like writing and stuff. But as far as the actual practice of law, that's why they call it practice, because you keep practicing until you get it right. I have not seen anything short of actual experience that prepares you for it. For example, one of the reasons I did not want to go into journalism is because I said, you know what, I can't deal with all these deadlines. But there are so many deadlines as a lawyer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, so I did not have a clue. I did not know the time that it takes and the research and the hours, but I'm just fortunate that my parents instilled a work ethic in me so that it wasn't something that I ran from or something that I couldn't handle. But it takes a tremendous amount of time, energy, and discipline to actually do it with any degree of skill and with the hope of getting a good outcome. And so that's what I stress the most to people who want to go into law, that it's really not about being rich. You can be a lawyer and work hard and not be rich and not be anywhere close to being rich. And that you should pick an area that you really want to practice in, because I spend so much time working that if I didn't enjoy it, it would be drudgery. So and I don't think it's possible to be a good attorney and not like what you're doing.
Okay, and as you talk a little bit about that, before your work as an attorney, what were you doing? What were the jobs that led up into this? And have you ever just woke up and said, yep, going back to being a waitress?
That's interesting. My parents had a very strict idea. They told me growing up that my job was to go to school and get good grades.
Okay.
But when I turned 17 and I was in my senior year of high school and there were a lot of expenses, they allowed me to get my first job. And so my first job was actually working in retail at TJ Maxx.
Okay. TJ Maxx, the original.
The Max were the minimum.
Yes, the original Burlington coat factory.
Exactly.
What TJ Maxx did you work at? The one in Northland?
No, I worked at the one that was at Oakland Mall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So a different, more east side is that way too.
Yes.
Okay. So what was that experience like?
It was very interesting because it was a long time ago, and so it was when that shopping center really hadn't been built up. I was one of the few black people that teenagers that were working there, so it was some interesting dynamics. Yeah.
Yes, I can only imagine. And when you compare that to you starting as a lawyer, was anything similar?
Well, I definitely had to learn how to speak up, and I had to learn how to talk to different types of people. So in that regard, there were some similarities. I would say those were the two similarities.
And that's what I was going to get at, because as much as you're learning and practicing law, what happens in exercising it, your clients too. Your clients still may have no clue of what's needed. Because, like I say, most people call an attorney when they need help.
Right.
And really, as much as they're telling you, what they're really saying is, can I give you some money to help me out of this situation? That's really that's the conversation we're having. We're not having, okay, let me give you the truth.
Right.
And I want you to tell me the truth. I want you to tell me that you can save me from this.
Right.
And it'll cost as much money as I budgeted to pay for this.
That's correct. You got it right. That's what it really boils down to for a lot of people.
So tempering those expectations of your clients, how do you go about that?
Well, for me, I take my role as an attorney very seriously. I consider it to be a calling. And so what I do is I have to be honest with people, and because I do not believe in taking money or making promises. The first thing you learn as a lawyer is that there are no guarantees. There are certain processes that you can go with. So I try to come up with a strategy for people. I explain to them what the desired outcome will be from the strategy, and then I let them know the pros, the cons, and the risk. And then we operate from that standpoint, because guarantees are something that you cannot usually provide. So that's what I do. I approach them with compassion and honesty, and a little bit, and after things have been resolved, a little bit of "don't do that again," kind of stuff. But that's what I do, because I got to tell you what you need to know and not what you want to hear.
Yes. And I'm definitely one of those people that's probably going to do it again. So as much as we've grown in relationships, and you have a lot of different types of clients, and you have cool relationships with clients. I'm cool with some of your other clients and everything too. So how have you grown the bait? Well, I guess even before we go there, school. What school did you go to? What was law school like? What was undergrad like? And I know you say that you basically kind of learn the functions of it. You don't really learn how to practice, but from school, what ended you up in the seat of like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I like this, and I will not find myself panhandling to survive with this career.
Well, I had a concept of what a lawyer does, and I'm a person that likes to fight for the underdog and have a nurturing way about me and want to protect people. So I knew that, but my understanding of what lawyers did, or what I felt they needed to do, I knew that was something that I could identify with strongly, because that was a part of who I was anyway. So in Wayne State, I went to Wayne State for undergrad, didn't really know what to major in. So they will tell you that if you want to go to law school, major in political science. So that's what I did. It's probably helpful if you want to go into government or politics, but I don't think that it really helped me to prepare for the career of law. What I found out later was that you could you could major in almost anything that would be helpful, like writing, anything that involves writing, anything that involves business that could tangentially help you, economics, even, to with the actual practice and understanding of things. So I went to Wayne State, had a good experience from a academic standpoint. I did well, got good grades, but the Wayne State that I went to is not the Wayne State that exists now as far as a campus life. It was really a school at that time that was for older students who were, I guess, non-traditional students, I should call them, as opposed, that's more politically correct. People who might have had jobs and were going back to school, but not the traditional student that was matriculating straight from high school. So I felt a little bit isolated. There wasn't much of a campus life. And I had toyed with the idea of going to Spelman for undergraduate school because I wanted to have the HBCU experience, but I was reluctant to leave home. But by the time I graduated from Wayne State, I was more than ready to go, and I had made a commitment that I wanted to go to an HBCU for law school.
Okay. All right. So what was law school like?
Law school was probably one of the happiest times of my life. It was a lot of fun. So I initially wanted to go to Howard's law school and was accepted to Howard, but Howard did not give the financial aid that I needed. I had a brother that was 4 years younger than me who was starting undergraduate school at the same time. He had also got admitted to Howard, but didn't get the scholarships that he needed. Basically, it was too much of a financial burden for our family for us to attend Howard. He ended up getting a full ride to Prairie View A&M in Texas, and so I found out and was offered a scholarship to Thurgood Marshall School of Law, which is a part of the Texas Southern University in Houston. And so I went off to Houston, Texas Southern, and he went off to Prairie View. So for 3 years, I mean, the weather was beautiful. Houston was a great place. But more importantly, I really enjoyed Thurgood Marshall School of Law. The students, I made friendships that I have continued to this day, but even more importantly, the professors really cared, and they made it an environment that was tough, but it was one where they stressed trying to make sure that you had what you needed to survive. And so it was a supportive, nurturing environment. And coming from Detroit, a predominantly black city, to that predominantly black law school was a good feeling. I just like the historical ramifications of how it came to be, because it was actually established based on the case Painter versus Sweat, when there was a 1947 Supreme Court case still dealing with separate but not equal. A black man wanted to attend law school, and so rather than allow him to attend an existing law school, they created Texas Southern University, the law school, Thurgood Marshall School of Law.
Ain't that something? Ain't that something? All right, so when we think about law school, and from there, I definitely believe the first journey, and I know the answer to this question, but the first real journey into it is where you go after law school as an intern, and the practice there and the experience that you get there. Where were you at, and from there, how did that impact you?
Well, it was interesting because everything that I liked about being away from home for law school turned to be a disadvantage when I got back here, because I would come home summers trying to get a job. And because I wasn't already in a network of lawyers here, it was very difficult for me to get a job.
Black revolutionaries, distillery owners, Italian fashion retailers, and Motown Grammy winners all share their best stories never before told in any other media outlets on Detroit is Different. Visit DetroitisDifferent.com or download the Detroit is Different app on Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store.
So my first summer, between the end of my first year of law school and the beginning of my second year of law school, I came back here and I went to the State Appellate Defender's Office seeking a job. None of the attorneys wanted to have me as a law clerk, but then luckily there was an attorney there who turned out to be the mother of one of my high school and elementary school classmates. So she agreed to work with me. None of the other attorneys in the office would, and so that was my first job. And so I felt really good about it, because wanting to help the underdog, I thought, okay, this is great. I can help somebody who's been wrongfully incarcerated. Worked on a brief. I remember going up to Ionia, I guess that's a medium security prison. And I remember when I heard I had to go through the metal detector, I had to be frisked, and I was like, I don't think I can do this. I think that I probably could help in a better capacity. I want to help people, but I thought this is not me. But it was a good experience and I'm glad that I had that because at least I was exposed to it, but I didn't think that I had the personality to really be effective.
Okay, so that summer kind of taught you that criminal law really ain't your thing.
Right.
From there, where did you go back and say, okay, I still want to continue to pursue law, and how did you shift into entertainment law or intellectual properties?
Well, I had always... That was something that I probably got from my dad because I was very much into Black history because of what he exposed us to. And I enjoyed music quite a bit. I'm a classically trained pianist. I took piano lessons for 10 years. I never had any aspirations of being a performer, but just really identified with the artist whose music I enjoyed. And so I would read books about them. I would look at documentaries because I was the type of person that, and still am, I want to feel like I know the artist. And so when I like your music, I want to know as much as I can about you and what made you the person you are to create this type of art. And so when I would read these stories, I kept seeing the same stories over and over again. There were artists who made a lot of money for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, they were broke. And it was because, and I started to notice a pattern. It was like, well, maybe they had the wrong attorney or some wrong accountant, who stole from them, wrong management, or they didn't pay their taxes, or they got addicted to some controlled substance and that impaired their ability to keep up with their things, or they had family members that sabotaged them, and invariably they were broke or dying early. And I felt like if I could see these patterns, then we might not be able to stop all of the pitfalls, but there are some things that we can avoid, and these are common patterns.
I was going to say, generally it's like all of them combined.
Right. And so I was like, people should not be falling victim and prey to these same things. And so this is something that I always, you know how you have the pipe dream of what if I could do anything, that this would be what I would do. And so when I remember when I was going back to law school to start my second year, at the end of that summer, as I mentioned before, my dad was also a counselor, and so he was talking to me about what type of law I would like to practice. So I shared with him, you know, the same type of things I was saying to you. And he said, well, is there anybody in Detroit that practices entertainment law? And I said, yes, there's this attorney named Gregory Reid, but I don't know him. I don't know how to meet him. And I said, I'm sure people approach him all the time about, you know, trying to work with him. Yeah.
Okay. Now, your relationship with Gregory Reid was already something that you knew about. How did you even know who Gregory Reid was?
Well, I love sports and entertainment, and I love Detroit too. And so I remember being in high school, just reading about him. I remember going to, I remember distinctly when I was in a senior or junior, he was the lawyer for the Soldiers play when it was at the Fisher Theater, and I remember him donating tickets to the Detroit Public Schools and me going to see the play. I remember hearing about him because I'm a sports fan too during the Kronk heyday, you know, with Tommy Hearns and Hilmer Kente, and knowing that he was representing Kronk and all those boxers, and it just made me feel good to see what was going on and see that somebody right there in Detroit was doing it. So he was definitely on my radar for those reasons.
Okay. So from there, I know you ended up working with Attorney Reid.
Yes.
How did that start?
Well, I felt like this was divine intervention. That was kind of confirmation that this is something that I should be doing. As I said, I went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law, but I didn't mention there was only one other person in my class from Detroit. And so we were studying. I was about to go home for the summer between the end of my second year, at the end of my second year of law school, and we were studying, taking a study break, and we were just talking. He had no idea I wanted to be an entertainment attorney. He just asked me, he said, Stephanie, are you going to stay here for the summer, or are you going home? And I said, I'm going home. So he said, well, do you have a job? I said, no, but I need one, because my parents had told me, when you come home, you better have a job. So he said, well,
Your dad.
Exactly. And so he said, well, I worked with an attorney last summer, and I think he would like you. Do you want me to call him and see if he would like to interview you? I said, yeah, sure. Who is it? He said, Gregory Reid.
Ain't that something?
Yeah. So at that,
that's somebody that never has to buy a sandwich when you around him.
Exactly.
What's his name?
His name is Roderick Weatherly.
Yes. Mr. Weatherly.
Yes.
Sandwich on Stephanie the rest of your life.
Absolutely. So he made the call to Gregory Reid, and I interviewed with Mr. Reid. He hired me, and as they say, the rest was history. We worked well together at the end of the summer, so well that he said, would you like to continue working for me remotely during your last year of law school? So I said yes. So he, at that, you know, that was before the internet. You know, I hate to date myself, so we couldn't, you know, he would send me things by FedEx. I would send them back. I would fax things to him. So my last year in law school, I worked with him remotely. I graduated and came back here, and he offered me a position as an associate, and then I worked with him for 8 years before starting my own firm, and he continues to mentor me and to be a colleague and a friend to this day.
Okay, so those 8 years in working with Attorney Reid.
Yes.
Now let's kind of get back to that discussion of like what you wanted to do.
Yes.
As I've had Attorney Howard Hertz on here, another entertainment attorney, and I definitely have this question for you of interacting with artists.
Yes.
It's very difficult.
It is.
Just because the artistry itself, I believe, takes place in exploring the insecurities and the vulnerabilities that we have in life. That also is what leads to the sex, the drug use, the people that may be leeching on for whatever reason at certain instances. Like, it can lead to destructive behaviors and altered states of reality.
Yes.
That compromise good business.
Yes.
So now I'm just talking about the 8 years after when you went on into your practice.
Yes.
Looking at it, what relationship do you see the ups and downs? Because you know how artists are. I gotta take this drug to wake up and then I gotta take this drug to go to sleep. I gotta, associate with these people because if I don't associate with these people, like that weird concept, like, and to help these people that may be beyond helping in some instances.
Well, I guess it for me, I would call myself having a holistic approach because I realize that there are certain ways that I'm nurturing. I look at an artist or any potential client first from a health perspective because I know that they cannot be any good to themselves or anyone else if they're not healthy. And so by the same token, I know that if they are stable in those ways, they'll be more effective as artists. So everybody does not want to hear that. So I play a nurturing role because I can't operate in a vacuum because if I see that you are not in a healthy state, I'm not built to ignore that and to say just sign this or just do this. So a lot of people don't want that type of involvement or caring from an attorney. They say, okay, you're my attorney, look at my papers. So if that's the mindset of that person, I don't deal with anyone that way because I look at you as a human first. So for me, on the front end, I try to do what I can as an advocate to make sure that you're not in a position where you're overworked, where you feel like you need to have uppers to be up and downers to go to sleep. So those are the types of things that I do from a negotiating standpoint. I speak up to make sure that work conditions are such that you don't have to abuse yourself. But there has to be something within the artist too that will not only receive that but be consistent and give that consistent message. If I know that a client is using things that I think are detrimental to their health, I really will talk to them about it, even to the point, even if it's not a matter of any illegal drugs, even if it's not even about alcohol, even if it's an addiction to food. I will tell any client it's more important for you to be healthy. I'm not going to sit there and tell you, well, a lot of gospel artists are overweight, but they may be, but I'm concerned about you living your best life. And a part of that means being healthy, not meaning that you have to take supplements or anything, but just making sure that you can have the energy and stamina to be able to run through an airport. You say you want to tour. I don't want you to have a heart attack on stage. It can be as basic as that, but I believe that if I'm investing time in you and you want to really do this, it's incumbent upon me not to have blinders on and not to just talk about papers and contracts. I have to look at the whole person to help you and at least tell you and guide you in a direction of where you need to be in order to maximize your talent. Otherwise, I don't think I'm being true to you and you're not being true to yourself.
Okay, now as you talk about being true to you and true to yourself, especially like with food, it's like put down the chili cheese fries. Like, Coney's always open. Oh, it's killing me. But when we get into the science of some of the worlds connected to entertainment, especially like these social circles often involve the drugs, the food, the sex, the personal demons that do exist. And along with those personal demons comes, the entourages. Like one of the rappers right now is causing like all this big to do. Tekashi 6ix9ine, this guy in New York, of checking in. But it's certain guys like a 50 Cent that's been paying for, almost like Blackwater security for himself for years for statements made, and even something like it is as crazy as that. Like you hire, here's a classic example, and I've seen a lot of rappers do it. You hire hood security.
Yes.
Basically, like you hire gangsters to be your security instead of real security guards.
Yes.
When you hire a gangster to be your security, because you know he's a gangster and he's the toughest guy in your hood, you know, and then you decide that you need an incident occurs. And I know you've seen this happen many a times.
Yes.
And now you decide, okay, I want to part ways with gangster security. You're mixing street business with real business. You can't necessarily arbitrate.
No, you can't.
With the Crips.
No.
They're not going to show up to that arbitration and say, you know, well, being that, you know, this guy that we hired for your security did sneak a gun into the venue and use that firearm against the assailant that approached the stage, and this is causing you to get sued. We're going to part ways with your security firm because the Crips now rely on $15,000 a month from you as an artist.
Right.
That's been banked for now and sometimes even forevermore.
Right.
Like, I know the person listening to this is thinking to themselves, that sounds crazy. But it's so many rappers and even singers.
Yes.
And even gospel artists.
Yes.
And comedians.
Yes.
And actors, authors that are interacting with these worlds. And when I say street, I mean it's this happens in the white world too, where it's like a criminal element, basically exploiting the money that they perceive the artist has, and gets their hooks in them.
Yes.
How, when you get, because this is generally the phone call the attorney gets. In those situations, which very common in rap. What's the advice? What's the love given? Is it just like, hey man, you probably will be paying Tukey the rest of your life. Whack 100 will be getting 10% of your deal, you know? And I really bring this up to say somebody that I looked up to for what he did and what he represents, and I look back at it and it's like, damn, that's messed up. But like a MC Hammer, he basically took damn near all of Oakland on tour with him just on the strength of, like, it was mothers coming up to him saying like, hey, you know, I don't want my son to go back to jail. So it's like, hey man, throw a 2 up, throw a L up, and then slice your neck, and now you on the Too Legit to Quit tour.
Right.
You just got to do that on stage.
Right.
$40,000 a year.
Right.
But now Hammer has entered into this family dynamic where he's relied upon.
It's a balance. You know, they call it survivor remorse when somebody makes it out of a depressed economy or a bad neighborhood. It's called survivor's remorse because you're torn between being happy about your success and feeling guilty about knowing that the people you left behind are still in dire straits. So it's
for a rapper, it's like you also are exploiting the dire straits,
right,
to gain a higher quality of life for yourself.
Right. So it's very difficult to advise people on things like that where there are personal relationships involved when you're talking about an entourage type situation. But the security thing, I try to always talk from a standpoint of practicality. You need trained professionals because the same type of, I guess, confrontations that you may encounter in a club or at a venue, they require a different level of sensitivity once you have a name and a brand and you become a target for potential lawsuits where people might actually start something. And there are a lot of good security who are trained in how to diffuse situations. And so when it's a situation like that, it's ultimately always is the client's decision, but it's a lot easier to talk to people or to kind of persuade them not to engage in that kind of renegade or Russian roulette type security. But when it comes to the issues of having an entourage, that's where it gets to be sensitive. And so all I try to do is encourage any artist that if you're going to have people along, people have skills, have them actually doing something that can benefit you so that they're not a liability. It's not always
Now,
possible.
how many entourages actually have skill sets?
Well, you'd be surprised. It depends also on
Who the artist is and
who
their
the artist
background.
is, because I mean, especially now where people develop skills with social media, video types of things like that. Sometimes it's possible. I mean, I know it's a stretch, but have them have some functionality and purpose for you other than starting trouble and being an expense.
Like Birdman has a jewelry carrier.
Yeah, that's a little bit much.
He carries my ice. He goes from town to town and carries my bags of jewelries. Like, hey, take out the 2015 Rolex.
Exactly.
To pay that man $80,000 a year. Okay, and then as we get to Birdman, that's a glad that classically does not pay.
Yes.
That's the other thing about this entertainment industry. Like, it's sometimes like the government. Sometimes you get a government contract and the government doesn't pay.
Right.
People are relying on these corporations thinking to themselves, well, it's a system and they're still on TV, so wouldn't they pay? But they don't pay.
No.
So lawyering up, as they call it,
Yes.
is sometimes the best way to get paid.
Yes.
When should a person lawyer up to know that they need to get paid? When is it worth it? Because sometimes I look at it like they have so many more resources to expend. And should I? As it's just been a known case of Birdman or Brian Williams of Cash Money or Young Money Records has been known not to pay producers or artists. And what he'll do is they'll drag through a long trial and he'll show up at the trial and say, look, I have 25% of what you need in cash. Do you want to take the cash today and drop the case or not? And oftentimes people take the cash today.
Right. Well, I think that a lot of it comes from your perspective. If you look at things in a business-like way from the onset, you have a much better chance of avoiding some of the pitfalls of not being paid. Because the first thing is that you're excited that Lil Wayne wants to use your track. So you don't want to say anything to rock the boat, perhaps. And so whatever they say goes. That's probably the wrong approach to take. And so at the point where you've been notified, if you're a producer, that, hey, someone is going to put my track out, that's a good time to get a lawyer. That way you're going to make sure that your paperwork is going to be presented before it comes out, because timing is also important. There is a sweet spot in the window of time when you can make sure that the likelihood of you getting paid is going to be maximized, and that's before the album is released, because the record company has a deadline where they want the paperwork in. There is a exposure to liability if they release something without having all the clearances. And so there's somebody who's in their legal and business affairs department that's pressing them, both from the record company side and the publisher side. Hey, we need to get the paperwork in. We need to get the paperwork in. That's the window of time that you need to get your paperwork and get it in order. A lot of times what they will do if you're inexperienced is, as a producer, they'll say, hey, we can get to the producer agreement later. We need you to sign this producer declaration. And my advice to people is don't ever sign a producer declaration. The producer declaration is pretty much a one-sided document that's really drafted for the benefit of the record company. It pretty much gives them authorization to release it without, usually it doesn't, sometimes they'll pay you a portion of a producer advance, but sometimes they don't pay anything. It doesn't lock in your splits, what's your producer royalty rate, or any of the terms of payment. It basically just says that, hey, I produced it and I authorized the record company to release it without any liability, and I'm giving up my interest in the copyright of the sound recording. So it basically gives them a free clearance to do it. And so once they get you to sign a producer declaration, then the pressure is off of them to enter a producer agreement with you. And you spend a large amount of time chasing them down. And ultimately, it could come to a situation where you do need to go to court, and because they don't have an incentive.
Okay, and you just talked about a whole nother challenge I find often with this is that the industry's like, it's almost like a party that you're getting invited to, as an artist. Because you'll meet somebody and like, okay, here's a classic artist thing that I've seen happen. You'll get a song that trends on YouTube or something, and then somebody will reach out to you and say, hey, we want you to perform at South by Southwest. And it's like, wow, I want to perform at South by Southwest. We'll fly you out and we'll give you, I don't know, $2,000. Never been nowhere. You want to go there. You go there. You meet somebody. The person you meet is the initial person. Like, hey, man, I really think I could get you on some more shows if you let me manage you. Now you met your manager.
Right.
Your manager's like, okay, we getting better now. Now I want to introduce you to the right lawyer. This is the guy that you need to meet. Now you got yourself a lawyer.
Right.
And then that lawyer's like, hey, we can really get you an agent. Now they gave you an agent. Hey, we can get you a publicist. Like, over time, the people that are providing you business are also giving you all of your network for who you associate with.
Right.
Meaning, like, they're saying that you're being referred that this is the best person you can go to for all of the services.
Right.
As if you went to, as if, like, you're walking in, it's like walking into Foot Locker to say, okay, I just really want to buy some socks.
Right.
But then it's like, oh, I'll buy some socks, then you buy some shoes, then you buy some shorts, then you buy a shirt, then you buy a jersey, then you buy, like, everything you're being referred to is initially referred by a system that you're not a part of.
That's true.
And then you end up in these intertwined relationships of the guy you buy your house from, the guy you buy your car from. Like, oh, you can't buy a car from a lot. You an artist now. You can't do that.
Right.
I mean, let's just go on and let's do a private jet.
Yes.
And then you're like, why are we doing a private jet? I can fly Delta. Nah, man, we don't got time for that. Yes. But the private jet is owned by your manager's cousin.
Yes. It's
the direct car company that you're paying 20% more for, Mercedes, is owned by your agent's uncle. Like, it almost like a whole like wing of resources that you think, even drugs included, and prostitution, is all interconnected to, like, the network of, like, probably that first person you met, which you feel some, like, some, I guess, bond and some, you have, like, reverence and like that, like, man, I should honor this person. So I don't want to, as you say, ruin anything. So I should probably use their attorney.
Yeah, that element exists, and to a degree, there is a lot of incestuous relationships.
Yeah.
And so what I always encourage my clients to do is that if you follow good, solid business practices and you make no exceptions regardless of the situation or who's involved, then you cannot go wrong. When you start making exceptions, oh, well, I don't want to offend this person, or, oh, well, I've known him, he's been good to me as his cousin, so I might as well do what he says. It's important to develop your own business judgment and discretion, and you only do that by evaluating information you've been given and making informed decisions. And as my role as a lawyer, that is what I learned, is what my job is really to do, is to educate, to protect to the extent that I can, but most importantly to inform my client of the circumstances and the potential outcome of certain decisions. And if I have given you enough information to make an informed decision, I've done my job. And so I encourage people to think freely. I encourage questions, because it's important. It's your life. Just like when I would always hear, Oprah and Bill Cosby saying, sign your own checks. Ultimately, you may be creative, but you are ultimately responsible for whether you wind up broke or not. And so those artists who say, I just want to deal with the creative side, too often are the people that end up with nothing. And people count on you doing that.
90% of artists I know feel that way. If not more. I'm being very I'm being ambitious by saying 10 don't. Because 90% say that. Well, generally what they'll say, it's not that. It's like, I really just want to focus on the artsy stuff. But I'm going to get the right person to focus on the business stuff. Like MC Hammer with his brother is a classic example.
Well, the right person is really you. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be responsible for everything, but you need to be the one that's making decisions and delegating. And you can abdicate that if you want, but I can guarantee you that the people that have abdicated, if they had the chance to do it over again after they've lost substantial amounts of money, and it's nothing, it's just that you're the one that works for this money. And let's face it, I don't know anybody who comes up as an artist that's born with a silver spoon in their mouth and makes millions of dollars and is used to it. They work for this money and they work to get where they're going to be. And so you cannot get there and then not take the proper precautions to conserve it and to use it properly. I mean, you will hear, because I keep track of the different lawsuits and things that are going on. Neo had a business manager that stole $2 million from him because he had access to an account. I don't know.
Dane Cook, Neo, Mary J. Blige, Sierra, Rihanna. Rihanna's whole situation with her accountant was something that really wasn't on TV, but her accountant took, they say, 3/4 of all of her income. And what's crazy is even in the legality of this, the argument that the accountant will present, like, Michael Vick's former agent, is going to probably be honored because some of these people doing this, Richard Pryor, some of the people they're doing business dealings with, know how to arm themselves as their, I don't even know, it's so weird. It's like it's stealing money, but it ain't even stealing money when it's like, okay, it's actually stealing money, but legally, it's not. As Mike Tyson was paying $150 for hand towels from Don King.
Right. So you ultimately have to take it. So you can take the responsibility after you're taken advantage of or before. So you owe it to yourself, just like I tell people who might come to me for something as simple as to copyright music, and then they'll be upset about the cost when I say, well, you should copyright every song separately. You can do it as a collection, but you have all of this stuff. Maybe you might want to do it separately, and they'll complain about a $55 filing fee, but you've invested thousands of hours in studio time, recording costs, and creativity is priceless to me. You can't put a value on it until you sell it. So at the point that you're not willing to make certain commitments to what you're doing, either you are acquiescing to being taken advantage of or you just don't care. You know what I mean? You cannot, nobody's going to care about what you have or have a stake in it as much as you are. So you can delegate, and you should delegate, but the buck should stop with you. You should make your own decisions, and you should insist that you make the people who work for you accountable to you before something obvious goes wrong. Those types of checks and balances can help to minimize you losing money, and it can lead to corrective action before it's really become a point that's damaging to you.
Okay, and in this world, also, some of it is the go along to get along. Because you'll get labeled as, I am labeled as hard to get along with. But you can easily get labeled as hard to get along with by not accepting, I want to bring my own attorney. I want to bring my own photo person. I want to bring my own video person. I got some people that do that business. What's the percentage on that? You can easily get labeled as that. And then the part of the when in Rome is the whole this person does that for Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. Those name drops and those circles, and this is another level. This only person, especially for the black entertainment attorney, it gets labeled as, go to the Jewish entertainment attorney after a while. The black entertainment attorney can only get you to a black level of success. But to get to that next level, you need to work with the person that's, spending weekends with Quincy Jones.
Well, I think that that's a personal choice that every artist has to make. I always encourage people to be true to themselves. But more importantly, I can say this unequivocally, that I would always encourage someone to deal with professionals that care about you as an artist and a person, and are not just interested in how much money they can make off of you, because the person that is only with you when you can make money for them is a very shallow relationship, and it's one that is destined to end at some point. When you have people that care about you, and that commitment and their commitment to you goes beyond how much money you can make them, that's when I think that's the difference between hiring an attorney to do a job and having an attorney that's really going to protect your best interests, because they see you more than as a dollar sign. Because you can pay someone to provide legal service. You cannot pay someone to care about what happens to you.
Now, this is the other flip side of that. I got to get an argument, because I know a lot of artists are looking at this. If you're still watching, this is a real deep discussion. Oftentimes, when those unreasonable offers are given, they're given with unreasonable deadlines too.
Yeah.
It's like, look, you need to get your agent right now. We need a publicist, and this person's ready. We're about to start this Drake tour. Are you ready to come on tour with Drake or Eminem or the Beatles or, I don't know, Jesus? You know what I'm saying? Are you ready right now? And you're like, well, I haven't really gone through the resume, and I want to. And it's like, oh man, well, maybe you'll come back, because that story exists a lot too.
It
where
does.
Artists, like I say, I'm labeled as hard to deal with, because even with Detroit is different, and I think I'm very easy to deal with. I just like to know what's happening. I like to know what's happening, and I like reasonable answers to questions that I have. But sometimes by even posing a question, I'm hard to work. You know what I'm saying? I'm hard to work with.
Well, there is a tendency in the industry, I believe, to treat artists as children, and for the record company and associated handlers to kind of serve in the parental type role. And to a certain degree, sometimes it does involve babysitting. But I always tell my clients that before you can have any type of relationship with anyone, it has to be a mutual respect. And so you teach people how to treat you, and so there's some give and take on both sides, because if we look at the history of how artists have been treated, more often than not, they get the short end of the stick. So unless you want to fall within the general category of being treated as an artist and falling into the same pitfalls that they have succumbed to, you have to look at and you have to learn from situations. If that means that you're being difficult because you have your own people involved, and they are competent, let's be clear, they have to be competent. You can't bring along somebody who is inferior. Then it's something that's better dealt with sooner than later. If you have to do something fast, I have never seen a business situation that ended well when someone did it in haste and didn't review it. So intuition, teaching people how to treat you, all of those to me play just as important of a role in the success of your business, because contracts are easy to get into but very difficult to exit.
But that's when people ask me, why do we need the contract? The contract ain't for when things go right.
Right.
The contract is for when things go wrong.
Right.
As two of my contracts that you wrote up for me, great contracts. Stephanie is an excellent contract writer.
Thank you.
Especially if you know what you want. I'm very plain. I'm like, okay, I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of this. I want to protect myself here. I want to protect myself here. I want to protect myself here. The state of Michigan and an employment law, I was getting slammed. But due to your contract, I was good. And I easily could have moved fast. I could have easily been on that, I could have easily just been like, well, we'll work this out later and we'll get to it. It's like, oh, hell no. Between you and Suzanne and my dad, things are, things flow well when it comes to contracts being needed. I definitely am a firm believer in contracts are when things go wrong, so you can pull that out, and then you can, and then if everything goes right, it's good. You still have the contract, but it's like insurance.
Yes, absolutely.
So when we talk about that moving fast, not knowing what the hell you signing, trying to be in room, I also, as a business person, know the other side of the debate too, because the machine may be bigger than the artist itself, especially in today's culture of a lot of different things, where it's people that have fame and celebrities, where the machine are just behind people for being, like, people are famous for being famous right now.
Right.
Like, the machine is giving itself, and when I say the machine, publicists, attorneys,
yes,
venues, as so many things are consolidated, and they may have always been. So you have the venue where people can experience the thing live. Now you have the media options where people can consolidate it and resell it. You have the intellectual property of it. You have the advertising, like the entity itself could advertise different brands. Like, how, is the industry kind of has an argument in the fact that, like what Motown felt. Barry Gordy felt like, look, we can have all of you guys saying heard it through the grapevine because it's a good song, and we have the etiquette coach, we have the choreographers, we have the songwriters, we have the engineers, and I'm making music the same way Ford makes cars. You happen to be David Ruffin. Next coming in is Gladys Knight. And it takes away the humanity of it.
Mm-hmm.
But, how important is the artist and the artistry when the machine itself probably is validating what people think is good art?
I think that it's important for artists to express and almost demand that other people recognize their own individuality. If you don't, you can go through a cookie cutter machine, but I think that a lot of people, and there's some common themes here, you got to be true to yourself. And I think that art is one of the truest forms of expression, self-expression. And so that's where the artist own values, in my opinion, have to surface. Do you want to be successful for being you, or do you want to be successful at all costs? Because I do believe that the true basis for longevity is rooted in people who know themselves and are true to themselves, because we can go down a list of one-hit wonders or people who were trendy but did not stand the test of time, and it ultimately boils down to, whether you're going to be yourself, and nobody can tell you better than yourself who you are. And so a lot of times it's a matter of, are you going to sell yourself, or are you going to do whatever someone wants you to do? Is the dream that big to you that you're going to sacrifice who you are to get there,
And shout out to Amp Filler. As you were saying that, I think Amp is quintessentially like, Amp's one of my favorite people ever. He needs to come back too. But Amp is that,
He is.
But even as you were saying that the other day, it came up on, because I listened to like a lot of like that pop music. One of the biggest songs, you definitely remember this in your era, Milli Vanilli with "Girl You Know It's True."
Yes.
That song, like, and what's so crazy, I think if that scandal were to happen today, it wouldn't even be a scandal.
It would
just be
not.
Like, I still like them. They cool. Good looking dudes.
Yes.
Like weird, like as you say, like exotic looking black dudes. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's
they could dance. And it was like, hey, give them a song. There you go.
Yeah, and
and the machine was completely behind. I mean, didn't they got like 4 Grammys or something?
Yeah, they had to give them back. And even when I was thinking about them when I was talking, but then also even In Vogue, great singers, great group, but they were created by the producers Foster and McElroy.
Mm-hmm.
They had no relationship with each other before, just auditioned for girls, and then put them together based on look and sound, got a deal. And I'm sure that they probably, in hindsight, regret it because the producers got the majority of the money. They didn't make a lot of money as artists off of sales when they were, at the height of their popularity. Ultimately, the group now is splintered, because they didn't have a bond, because they didn't know each other. So when you look at the decisions that you're making, I think you owe it to yourself to look beyond what's right in front of you. And that's why I feel like history is so important, because it does repeat itself. Now I've gotten to the point that when I have new artists, based upon whether they're male, female, solo, group, I recommend biographies to them, for them, or autobiographies, so they can read them, so they can see, because you know how they say the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah, the same families that was exploiting Louis Armstrong.
Yes,
is exploiting other people,
and the same tactics.
And it's really the same. Yeah, it's the same stuff. It's the same venues. It's the same ownership. It's just been passed down generationally.
Same tactics. You could, if you're a solo female artist, you can bet that if you work with a producer, there's a strong chance that producer is going to try to get in a relationship with you. Or if you have a boyfriend or a husband, whatever, it's a strong chance, even if he has no knowledge of the business, that he's going to want to be your manager.
Hilarious.
And so, and I'm not making a judgment, because sometimes maybe it works, but at least be aware of the pitfalls and understand, so that you can try, maybe navigate, have a different ending to your story, but it's the same dynamics. So I encourage them, because I tell them, I said, look, read this, and then just, don't trust me, just read it, and then look for the signs.
And on that point, we're wrapping up, but this was a great discussion, and you know how much I'm building my team, because it's needed, and a lot of love is needed. I love having you around. We're gonna have to do some more stuff.
Yes.
I know you're doing something with Piper soon.
Yes.
The homie, part of the podcast, Detroit is Different Podcast Network. But we're gonna have to teach, because it's more lessons that are needed, and I definitely have my own quirky way of going about business, but I'm 3 generations into entrepreneurship. So my belief system in it is a lot different than other people. And even what I perceive as success is different than a lot of other people too. But I really do think that bringing back these discussions in how things function, as I'll be talking to Yusef Shakur very soon, because as much as you're saying, like, you need to say good business, we need to sit down and really draw up what those codes are. Me, you, my dad, Roderick Miller, some other people need to sit down and say, like, these are codes of good business.
Yes. I'd be happy to, and I'm always available whenever you want to talk.
We need to definitely do that, because a lot of people, and it ain't even necessarily the complaints, like, when I go to the Black Star barbecue store, they run out of hot sauce. It's like, look, they may run out of hot sauce. They should run out of hot sauce. When you go to the bakery, you don't get mad. They run out of donuts.
Right.
They not buying hot sauce to continue to have hot sauce. The goal is to run out.
Right.
Now, if they open up and are out, that's
a different story.
That's a challenge. But you know what's happening.
Yes.
So let's get into the classic Detroit is Different questions. First off, what was your very first car, and what year, make, and model? What year did you get it, and what year, make, and model was it?
My very first car was a 1989 Ford Probe.
Okay, what year did you get it?
1989.
Wow, so it was fresh.
Yes.
You was bumping that, what was that, the Funky Divas in Vogue album? Never gonna get it. Where was the first place you drove to when you got it?
Houston. I got it because I was in law school and I needed a car.
Oh man!
Yes.
So your dad and them helped.
Yeah, they co-signed. I paid for it, but they co-signed.
Ain't that something?
Yes.
Ain't that something? He was really like, you really need a job now.
Yes.
You're not about to mess my credit up.
Yes, exactly.
I can mess my credit up.
Not you.
Exactly. The classic. Hey, we should do better. 3 songs. You get to play 3 songs. It's the end of the fireworks. You're at Woodward and Jefferson, and you're a DJ. what songs are you playing? What 3 songs are you playing?
That's a good question. Planet Rock.
Okay, Planet Rock, Bambaataa.
It's like that, and that's the way it is.
Oh, you going all hip hop? Okay.
Yeah, I think of
Run DMC. I always juggle. Do I like that song more or Hard Times? But okay, continue.
and This Is How We Do It.
Oh, you going like all hip hop?
Yes.
So funny. I hang around so many old hip hop heads. They were mad when that song came out because it was like it was so weird. It was like they were mad that a singer sampled a rap song. Even though rap is like built off of
samples.
sampling, but the backwardsness of
Yes.
It's like, you know what I'm saying? You got this dude from LA that was like big into like New Yorkers did not like West Coast music.
Exactly, when that was the place for hip hop and no place else.
Yes, This Is How We Do It. Montel Jordan. That's a classic unsung. All types of.
Oh, it is.
All types of stuff. I'm pretty sure it's like an unsung too with him being a preacher right now. So. The very last question, if you could rename Woodward after one Detroiter, who would it be and why?
Coleman Alexander Young.
Okay. The most votes. But why?
Because he embodies what the spirit of Detroit is to me. I remember growing up, I remember going to a graduation ceremony and him being announced as the only mayor that this class has ever known. He just embodies what Detroit means for me. Fiercely loyal, tough, no nonsense, take no prisoners, and I feel that that's a main artery to the city, and I feel like that would be a fitting tribute for him.
Yeah, I'm with it. I'm definitely with it. Stephanie. Definitely tell people, like I say, this is my attorney. I work with her, and I've known her for years. If you have contracts, just so people know, I'm going to give people a context of it. Intellectual property is not just music and arts and everything like that. It's also a lot dealing with contracts and percentages. So definitely when it comes to writing it up, drafting it, having a better understanding, if you ever tried to buy a house, even though it's real estate attorneys out here, you are not reading all of that stuff. I remember when I first got some property, it was like, wow, this is like War and Peace or something. So you need to arm yourself as opposed to, thumbing through it and just signing everywhere a person says sign. Stephanie is somebody to know. How do people get in contact with you?
The best way to reach me is on my cell phone. The number is 313-506-6905. My office number is 313-340-0440.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kari.
Yep.